Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Ji ayanu, pakhair agale, ni hao, chunashumme, washmale. Ohio gozaimasu, guten Morgen, hola, boyor, privyet, kaifa hal? Halashuma chatore, ahlan wasalan, marhaba, buna, mucho gracias, swabia, bhalli kiraya, hosh galden, Huya Mora, Chivato, Chihal, Yod, Kalimera, and a very warm welcome to everybody who's tuned into PTV World and watching World this morning. Alongside my very well-learned colleague who happens to be Miss Haja Sati. Hello Haja, Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing today?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for introducing me, Shahzad. So I was going through my feed and as usual I came across a very interesting information which was based on how we've seen that Johnson & Johnson has been in a lot of controversy because their products were causing a lot of cancer, especially in the babies, right, and in the mothers too. So there is a new information that have surfaced in which they have actually hired a dermatologist and his name was Albert Kligman, and what he did was that he experimented the asbestos and all of these dangerous diseases to the black prisoners in America back in 1960s. And a lot of prisoners, because they were wrongly incarcerated into the jails and they needed the bail money, and so low as to ranging to $1, and then they would get that money and then they would get themselves exposed to all lot of these diseases, all lot of this experimentation, the asbestos, because he was experimenting on that and what will be the impact of that, and they can potentially pay a lot of $1 billion damage, and because they have tried to stop 38,000 lawsuits because a lot of people who were victims of that, they have filed it again. And that got me thinking about the status of racism and a lot of conversation that is hinged around it. And I think I was having this conversation with my father, with my Abba yesterday, and I said that, okay, if you analyze back then 1400 years ago when Hazur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that kisi kale ko gore par, kisi gore ko kale par, kisi arbi ko ajmi par, kisi ajmi ko arbi par koi fawqiyat hasil nahi magar taqwa ke sabab. So the status of the prestige was a link to the taqwa, to the God fearness, to the God consciousness, and that is how they discarded the institutionalized racism, right? True. And do you remember that anecdote when a group of people went to Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to complain about Hazrat Bilal because he was in the bonded labor, and they said that we do not like when he performed the azan on the pulpits, so he didn't do that, and the next morning the sun didn't rise, and that was his status in Islam, and they successfully shackled the institutionalized racism. But in the modern day in the West, I see that that is a still problem there, because just look at how the royal family still have a problem accepting Meghan Markle into their fold just because on their skin, right? Exactly. And America still has a 3/5 rule where 5 black vote will equal to 3 black vote. They still are not equal citizen of the country. True. So I was thinking that when we were close to a discursive root of Islam, we had this conversation 1400 years ago, and now we are again having this conversation that how we need to dismantle the institutional racism, and we need to be have a more dignity to all of the people who are living there.
Exactly. And Haja, in addition to that, just very recently I actually watched a film, and it stars Eddie Murphy in it as well. Okay. And so the entire concept is about how this white boy is in love with a black woman, and how they wanted to get married, but just because of the fact that there was racism which still existed amidst the families, so both of them couldn't really get married. So eventually, the mother of the boy and then the father of the girl, they had to kind of decide, sit down together that, hey, you know what, if the kids are happy, we really need to kind of forget about each and everything and then continue with that. But having said that, Haja, I think I really need to admit over here that yesterday when you said that the weather is changing and I couldn't feel it, I could feel it today. It just feels different. I'm not at the top of my energy today, but it feels literally different. In this suit, I feel as if, it's getting a little more warmer over here. But for everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, whenever the weather is transitioning, whenever the weather is changing, please be a little more careful. True. For your kids, for yourself as well, because what happens is that even if you feel that, okay, it's a little warm, you step outside, it's still colder, and you get a surprise, and there you have flu or any other disease, God forbid, as well. So just please make sure that you keep a check on that before heading out from your houses, from your offices. True. Make sure that you wear something warm. I mean, we're not saying that it's summers already, but it's the transition period, and we're seeing that how the temperature is going to rise to somewhat around 21 degrees centigrade over here in Islamabad. I don't know. I think I'm going to miss winters.
I think the April is already in the February, and I think there will be June in the April. So there's a very perplexing sort of the climate changes that are going on, and we do not like it, certainly, of course, because we are a victim of that. Moving on to our top stories, in which our Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif will inaugurate the K3 nuclear power plant in Karachi today, and that has been built in the cooperation with China. Prime Minister said this during a meeting with the delegation of China National Nuclear Corporation, which called on him in Islamabad. After operationalization of K3 power plant, the generation of nuclear power in Karachi would reach 2200 megawatts. And I think it's a great step that we are heading towards a cleaner form of the energy, because obviously, number one, Pakistan does need the energy. We are the energy deprived country in terms of it. And also, it is clean. This is a very big step, because obviously because of the environmental changes, and just now we were talking about the climate change and how it impacts that. The impact of the using nuclear technology are not devastating as compared to the coal or the other form of the energy.
And exactly, and I believe that it's about time that we certainly really need to get to this point as well. But having said that, I think I would want to congratulate the entire team of Prime Minister Mia Mohammad Shahbaz Sharif Saab as well, because they've always made sure to be on top of their game, make sure that whenever they're in government, they deliver at their best as well. But having said that, ladies and gentlemen, it is our utmost responsibility to actually remember, all of our heroes who contributed to what name Pakistan enjoys today as well. And such is an example of Mr. Intizar Hussain, whose death anniversary is being observed today as well. Ladies and gentlemen, he happens to be a fiction writer. And Intizar Hussain Saab was born in India on December 7th in 1923 in Dubai, Bulandshahr. He migrated to Pakistan in 1947. He obtained a master's degree in Urdu. He wanted to do masters in English literature also, but could not fulfill his desire. Mr. Intizar Hussain wrote many short stories and novels in Urdu and also columns for English newspapers. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi rajoon. May his soul rest in peace, and still patience for the bereaved.
Okay, so moving on to our top story, which is Pakistan has won the West Asia Baseball Cup 2023. Convincingly after a tremendous performance, and in the final Pakistan was facing a fierce Palestinian team. Pakistan secured the win with a 4-goal margin, winning in style with a scoreline of 11-3. With this win, Pakistan have qualified for the Asia Games and the Asian Championship.
And so no matter how much, how closely I look at this game, I mean, till date, I still cannot understand what the rules of this game are.
Right.
I mean, so you hit the ball, you run, then there's home run. It's still confusing. Hajar, do you have any idea about baseball?
No, I was about to ask you, have you ever played that? Because I've never played that. I haven't even played, what do you call it, the basketball or the ball.
No, but I have played baseball, but I certainly didn't know, what the rules were in place as well. But having said that, I think we've spoken about, how Pakistan is doing good in sports. I think Pakistan has always been doing phenomenally well when we talk about, medical sciences. For all the institutes we have, ladies and gentlemen, they've contributed quite a lot. But just, I think post-COVID, we have seen that, more than 700,000 people fled away from Pakistan, given the economic conditions we were in, unfortunately. But now, having said that, I think that, when we speak about all of these institutes who are imparting that education to students who want to be doctors in future, they've really been on their tiptoes, making sure that they bring in newer technology, that they make sure that teacher trainings are taking place, that, all of that code of conduct is being followed. Because I've had, alhamdulillah, 4 doctors in my house, and, I've seen how disciplined they are, usually. And, for one of those gentlemen, who happens to be my nephew, I really never thought that he could become a doctor, but I think I'm glad that, he went to the right school or the right university or the right institute as well. But having said that, I think when we speak about medical sciences, there's a lot of research which is involved in it as well. And after every now and then we have seen, I mean, this is a normal conversation amidst our brothers and sisters, because a few of my sisters happen to be doctors too as well, and they are like that, medical science is changing rapidly. But when we say that medical science is changing rapidly, are we making sure that the educational standards we maintain, that we are on top of our game as well? I think to have this conversation, whether in future, how are we going to maintain that education standard when we speak about medical sciences, ladies and gentlemen, we're very lucky that we've been joined by one of the best over here in Islamabad and Rawalpindi as well. And without any further ado, I would like to introduce our very worthy guest, who happens to be MD Akbar Khan Niazi Teaching Hospital, and he is Mr. Yasir Khan Niazi. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning.
Wa alaikum assalam, and thank you for having me back again.
Thank you so much for joining us, sir. It's wonderful to have you. The last time you came over here was on November 22nd, if I'm not wrong, somewhere around November. So it's been a long time. And the last time when you were here, you said that, that we only have 100 seats for students to fill. and we had 11,000 applications, so pretty much which was 1 to 1,000 ratio.
Yes.
Have you sorted it out? Let's get started from here.
It's a very cumbersome and very long process.
Okay.
And in absence of changing policies every year, the admission policy does not help with this process. And it keeps the students in uncertainty.
True.
And that causes a lot of psychological stress. And we had to work very hard to bring them back and to get to them to a level where they are ready to take up the medical education once over again. One thing I would like to point out, the challenges which you talked about, the 700,000 people leaving Pakistan, one of the biggest brain drain which is coming is in the medical field.
True.
The doctors, our qualified doctors are leaving.
And that's
in
why
droves,
I mentioned it. Yeah.
In droves. And that's where we have the biggest challenge.
True.
And for us as an institutions to keep up with that, it's becoming challenging every day.
True.
For us to choose from 11,000, because there's a lot of desire and we have very good students. But again, every year it's a new policy and we had to go through the process over again, explaining it to the students, then going through the whole selection process. And it becomes sometimes very, very tough, even for us, and it's a nerve-breaking process. I do not look forward to it every year.
It's a process you call for Lexotinil, right?
Exactly. and the thing is, because every student who walks in, he brings with him a hope. There's a hope in his eyes. He wants to serve. He wants to become the best. And few people sit there making call for his future. And it's a huge responsibility on whoever are selecting and whatever we call MEG. Because our wish is that everybody who wants to become a doctor, let us make him a doctor. Give him a chance at least to study. But unfortunately, it's not possible. There's always a pyramid and very few have to be selected.
And talking about the future of healthcare, because you represent one of the biggest medical institute in Pakistan. So let's talk about making the healthcare more accessible to people out there, especially because we know that the diseases or the health conditions will always remain a pertinent problem in the country or in the world as in large. So how can we make sure that the poor people who are particularly living in the rural areas, who do not have coverage to good healthcare options, and in terms of they fall prey to a lot of quacks and a lot of religious superstition, and they cannot access that, how can we make sure that we make them more accessible towards this universal healthcare?
That's an excellent question. You raise a very, very important point. And what we feel in being part of the healthcare, that once the COVID is over, once again we are losing the focus which was brought on the healthcare service in Pakistan. And we need to keep that focus which we attained during COVID, and we need to keep it up. Accessibility remains the biggest challenge to healthcare in Pakistan, both from development point of view as well as from the containing of the pandemics or any type of disease. Awareness, prevention. We need to become very, very vigilant on that, and we have to have a national emergency. I have always called for a national health emergency to come in place, where we have to come up with a policy, where we need to see how the accessibility has to increase. We need to see how we can utilize the private sector to provide that kind of service where government cannot. Sehat Suhulat program, the insurance program, is a step in the right direction. And we are hoping that the government will continue with that and they will keep on improving. Of course, when you launch a new program, there are a lot of challenges which come through. But the thing is, it's something we have to keep working on and come up and making it more sustainable and accessible to people. And other one is that we need to have a consistent policy for private sector to go in and start investing. And we need to plan. We can't have an urban concentration of healthcare. It needs to move on to the sub-sectors and sub-population centers in Pakistan, and that's where we have to come.
And it was indeed, a sigh of relief when, when we came to know about, Sehat Sahulat program as well. And, as you said that, that we wish that it continues. I think, we would certainly want people to actually have that sort of relaxation that, okay, God forbid, if we get ill, we are being looked after by the government. But sir, having said that, since, my wonderful colleague spoke about accessibility. Now, when we speak about accessibility, obviously for somebody, who wants some healthcare services, I think that's something which one way or the other you will get. But now when we speak about brain drain over here in Pakistan, we do know how bad, it is, or the numbers are for nursing staff as well. Don't you think that the hospitals really need to increase their capacity of having more and more students so that we can prepare and that we can fulfill for that brain drain which is taking place as of now? Because just yesterday I read another news article which said that there are more number of people who are flooding away from Pakistan now.
True.
Exactly. Absolutely, you're right. The thing is, first of all, what we need to look at health as a system. It's not only doctors.
True.
It's a complete system where nurses, medical technologists, sports staff, paramedics, all comes into that. So we can't be. Just to give you a perspective, WHO sets up for every 10,000 of population to have 23 healthcare workers. Pakistan has only 12.
That's it.
And we are deficient. We are in the bottom 15% of the nations. When it comes to a healthcare index, we are 148 out of 166. So that's the condition of our healthcare system today. And we need to be, really need to step up. And we need to look at not only doctors, production of nurses, quality, and paramedics and others.
Exactly. And sir, having said that, because you did mention that, we really need to look at it holistically, I think it's beautiful. But having said that, where we kind of discuss about, building upon the capacity of having more and more students, do you think down the line, God forbid, if we focus more on quantity, we might be compromising with the quality of the education?
Yes, that's always the risk which all exists. And whenever you try to expand the quantity, the quality, you have to be more vigilant that the quality does not suffer, because that is a risk which comes up by a quick and immediate expansion.
So how does Akbar Khan Niazi Teaching Hospital maintains its educational standards?
Well, we are very vigilant on that. We have a full-time medical education department. We have a quality control department, both on education as well as on patient care. And we keep on working and monitoring the standards. We have a full-time committee which improvises. So not only that we are maintaining the standards, but how we can make it more better.
Wow.
And whether it's our teaching techniques, whether it's our clinical teaching techniques, or it is patient care. And we keep on looking at and seeking international standards and quality certifications to prove that whatever we are doing to that level.
So it's a continuous process.
It's a continuous, you can't. Improvement is a continuous, Kaizen. That's a word, a Japanese word which we learn. It's a part of Six Sigma management system also. That the only constant is improvement. And change.
Exactly. That's true. So let's talk about some of the abuses that occur in the field of the medical profession, and we have seen that how, especially in the field of the transplants, how poor people were robbed of their very vital organs, and then they were given many minimal rupees for that exchange. And obviously government cracked down that massively on that practice, but I think underground it still survives. So what are some of the problems that you see in the medical profession, and what are the solutions for that?
Regulation. Not over-regulation, but regulation. The thing is, transplant is, we need to create, we keep on talking about it, that we need to create these national registries.
Right.
I think we have a model in the West which is called the Organ Transplant Registry, where there is a centralized agency which monitors the donors as well as the recipients, and then they match a donor recipient, and it's done through that agency. The hospitals cannot do that. That is a one of the things we have to do that. We need to do immediately when it comes to transplant, because we haven't been able to do. We've been able to do live transplant where live donor is needed, but still the cadaver transplants like heart and others is not being done in Pakistan. It's not available because we do not have the regulation and the systems to match the donor, and to encourage the donors first to come forward to donate, and secondly to how to match the donors with the recipient and have it regulated way where abuse does not happen. And similar is the case with cancer. With the oncology and cancer treatment. We need to create a national registry for that, so we know what type of cancers are existing and all this stuff. So data management and matching people, and that's where actually it's coming. We keep on telling them, government's job is not running hospital.
True.
It is enabling for the hospital to function and have the right regulation and the standards and then hold people, organization accountable.
And run them smoothly. I think
Yes.
that certainly is the purpose as well, and that's where we do face a lot of challenges, because I've been very vocal about it, and I've always mentioned that you go to any private organization office, and the moment you walk in, there'll be somebody who's going to receive you, who will sit you down somewhere. Be like, okay, sir, how can I help you? You'll be like, okay, I'm here for this purpose. You're like, okay, I'm going to fill in the form, and you're over there having your own cup of coffee or tea or whatever you want. You walk into a government office, I'm very sorry if it's going to hurt somebody's sentiment, but this is something which I've been through myself. You go over there, you tell the other person who's an officer, who's a public servant, he's there for you. You tell him, sir, I'm here, I have to submit this form to you. Okay, sir, you're missing 3 documents. You go all day long, you move around, you come back, then he'll be like, okay, sir, you've got these 3 documents, now you need to get these photocopies as well. I mean, why can't we have such a system where we walk in and you treat us like we are your clients? I mean, I think that's how it needs to be, and that's why the government actually has all of those people over there. And it's not the government problem. I think it's the problem within the people who serve the government. So let me be very vocal about it. But having said that, sir, because you spoke about cancer and other illnesses as well, how we really need to have a national registry, and I think it's a great idea. We certainly could have moved on by now, but we unfortunately never did. But having said that, since you spoke about cancer, so because I know myself and I've been suffering from it myself as well, I've seen that, how there's no readily any medicine available, even if we speak about oral chemos. So imagine that, if there's this medicine with the name of Tasigna or Glyvac, it was the Punjab government's plan that they were giving it for free to people. And I've seen that, whenever there was a shift in the government within the provinces, I've seen that the medicine dispensing activity was actually blocked. It was at halt. People were not getting any medicine. Alhamdulillah, they are now. But having said that, sir, imagine, don't you think that we really need to have a regulatory policy where the pharmaceuticals cannot actually make the medicine to be so expensive? Unfortunately, we do not make it. We import it. And thanks to all of those companies that they are sending it over here as well, we might at times be like monkeys to them, because they're still experimenting a lot of those medicines over here in the third world countries. How do you think that we can at least make these medicines available for each and every individual who's suffering from cancer, unfortunately?
Research, local development.
Right.
We have to create culture
Our own.
of our own. We do not do that. We have become receiving on the end of this. Bring in a solution, do it here. 90% of our raw material is imported in the medicine. So we are, kind of mixing it and packaging pharmaceutical industry rather than indigenous. You're talking about cancer, which is very advanced.
True.
We spent 3 months of dengue pandemic in Pakistan without paracetamol.
Oh my God.
And we had to manage that. So a country like Pakistan with 22 crore people population, we can't produce our own paracetamol.
True.
It's a dilemma. And
Still, even when people start to get influenza, there's no Arinac Fort available.
Exactly.
That's
So it is. So until and unless we encourage research, we need to bring in indigenous industry which develops the raw material here, and we have to do that. And that's why I keep on stressing that we need a national health emergency where every segment of healthcare system needs to be addressed separately and have a plan for it, and then we need to monitor and execute it. We can't keep on building hospitals. Doesn't help. One of the reasons the hospitals are not expanding because we can't find nurses.
Exactly.
I can't expand. I have to introduce new fields, but we can't do that because we do not have trained. We might find the best doctors, but we can't find the trained nurses and the paramedical to support that kind of a scenario. We have to train them first and then develop, which is time-taking. So we need to develop our post from specialization all the way to paramedics. What is the need spectrum? Need analysis needs to be done. Then we need to put up the right institution which will train the right people for the right job at the right place.
Wow.
Okay, sir, one last question before we wrap up this segment, and I was very curious because the way COVID hit the entire globe, we have seen the, especially the West, how it was massively suffering, and how we've seen in England and Italy, people were dying, they were suffocating because they could not breathe. But in Pakistan, I think the conditions were not that bad as they were in the West, and for that matter, even the neighboring country too. Despite the fact that I think when it comes to a neighboring country, we have the same sort of topography and in the environment and the people's practices are a lot more similar. So why do you think from the medical perspective, Pakistan was better able to tackle this healthcare emergency? What does the latest research say in this regard?
I will give credit to our doctors.
Okay.
Their resilience, their ability to handle emergency, because they're in constantly state of emergency. They're operating under conditions which require them to improvise. And our doctors, they improvised very quickly. They understood what needs to be done and they managed it. So all credit goes to the healthcare workers and especially the doctors, because we know in our hospital we had one doctor, and all Dr. Rizwan Kazi, I will take the advantage to name him, that the way he set up the regime and the way he went after the disease and the treatment of it, and that helped us a lot. And our hospital had one of the lowest mortality on COVID wards, comparatively in the region. And that credit goes to our doctors and their ability to handle a situation like this. And they are, because they're constantly under pressure. They're working with very less resources. So they're improvising, and when COVID hit, they were there to help us out and this nation, and we can't be thankful enough.
Wow. So don't you think that the doctors in the West, they were not more dutiful towards their own people? Because obviously there has to be something more than that when it comes to how COVID was not that much of a deadly force here in Pakistan.
The thing is, I won't say they were not careful about this. It's just the ability to understand and move forward. Their dependency on a lot of other things, and our doctors' ability, dependency on their own skills and to do that. And secondly, it's just that we are exposed to too many diseases, I guess.
So
this is one of the things.
Yeah.
The TB still exists in Pakistan.
Polio
And,
still exists in
polio
Pakistan.
still exists. That was already the immune system, immunity existed among the people. Yes, we need to thoroughly understand why we got that lucky, because next time we might not be.
True.
Exactly. And
That's
sir,
true.
one
Thank you
last
so
thing, because you know, when it was on the social media that you're going to be over here, so one student actually wrote to me and he said that, please, can you ask this question? So this one's for you. So the student actually wrote to me and said that, you know, that when we graduate from a medical university or institute, what happens is that, you know, we end up doing a house job. And he said that, you know, when we go for our house job, the one-day shift is like a complete shift. You know, you're there for 24 hours, which makes it a little difficult for us. We might have few places to rest, but then there are more chances of negligence from the house officers as well. What's your take on this? Do you think that it needs to be changed?
That's a stress test. We have to put the students through that stress test to know how much, to get them ready for the pressures which is going to come. Not only that, they will be doing 24-hour shifts, but the thing is, sometimes this decision making in an emergency situation, you need all your nerves to be there and out. So this training program of putting students through 36 hours continuous shift I challenged it also. Being a non-doctor, I kept on asking and these things. But that was what the doctors believe, that this is a kind of a stress test and training where in the future they might not have to do 36 hours of duty, but they might be in a scenario where they will need all their nerves and get it together to make a right decision for the patient.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you very much, Yasir
Thank
Khan
you so
Niazi Saab. Ladies and gentlemen, we were in conversation with MD Akbar Khan Niazi Teaching Hospital. With that, we would certainly want to head out towards a short break. After a short break, when you guys are going to come back, Hajra has been thinking lately that, you know, her job might be in jeopardy. Why and how is something which we will be talking about. And in fact, when I say Hajra, I think, yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say, that when I say Hajra, I mean even me or anybody on television for that matter.
True.
Why and how, I think that's something we are discussing. And, you know, I would want to say it in Urdu too as well. ख़वातीन और हज़रात, हाजरा को ये लग रहा है आजकल के दौर में कि शायद हमारी नौकरियां खतरे में हैं और सिर्फ हाजरा को नहीं, ये सबको लगना चाहिए. क्यों? ये हम एक छोटी सी ब्रेक के बाद बताएंगे. Please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Good morning. It is indeed a good morning. Thank you so much.
Welcome back, and before going on to the break, like Shahzad very playfully mentioned, that we think and I think that our jobs are at this stake, and I do feel that we are just two redundant human beings sitting here having this conversation, while the future may not look the same, because there is a new thing in this world, this called ChatGPT. It's a chatbot, and how it has this ability of self-learning, and how it can be fed at hundreds or thousands of meta bytes of the words, and from that it can generate a lot of content. And not just that, because of that, I do remember that Facebook or Meta's Galactica was cancelled just 3 days after its launch. It was also a chatbot. Why? Because it spread a lot of political and scientific misinformation. So how to tackle that, especially when it is coming from not a human being but from a bot? So this another dilemma which ChatGPT might land us into it, and it is causing a lot of controversy. So what exactly is this software? I think students are having a field day, because they can have their assignments over that ChatGPT, and how we can deconstruct this entire conception of that.
Exactly. And Hajar, having said that, imagine that we live in an era of misinformation. I think we certainly really need to agree to this, that somebody said something to me, I was not sure about whether it was true or not. I went on to somebody else, I said the same thing, they recognized it, they understood it, because they trusted me. So imagine that for people over here, even if we download an article, we're certainly not sure of the source. Right. Imagine in an era where people are not even willing to figure out whether who wrote the article, whether there's any authenticity in it. Right. We have a chatbot over here who's actually going to give us a lot of more content, and we certainly won't be able to kind of comprehend whether it comes from a trustworthy source or not. So imagine, I think it's going to be literally very confusing for all of these papers we make, all of these writings we do. We have ChatGPT which is going to do it now. And I believe that a lot of students are actually taking advantage of it. And to talk about it, what it is, how can people utilize it for the good? Because when social media came in, when internet came in, everybody was very reluctant, in our parents, everybody, oh, nahi ji, bacche kharab ho jayenge and all of that. But eventually we have realized that there were some pros, there were some cons, obviously, and you certainly really need to kind of strike that balance, that you use it for your benefit. But when it comes down to people, and when it comes down to benefiting themselves, they certainly do not have any line of morals in between, or any line of morals or ethics in between as well. So they're like, yeah, if I have to get this job done, let me get it done. And ChatGPT will actually do it for you. But what it is, how does it work, is something which we're trying to figure out for all our audiences in 46 different countries. We're very lucky, ladies and gentlemen, that we've been joined by Ms. Sadaf Khan. Hello, assalamu alaikum, good morning, how are you?
Assalamu alaikum. I'm good, but don't worry, the picture you're painting, yeah, it's not gonna be that bad. Any artificial intelligence, ChatGPT or whatever, it's only as good as the user.
Right. Exactly, exactly. So thank you very much for saying that. But please, can you just, make our audiences understand what it is and what it can do, or the wonders of ChatGPT?
And it's been dubbed as the electricity 2.0, because the invention is as significant as that was once of the Edison's bulb, right?
Yeah, so no, it is the future. It has been the future. Artificial intelligence, we all knew it's going to be there. It's here in a way now that is accessible to the masses. That's the main difference.
True.
Because if you think about artificial intelligence, it's been a part and parcel of all the scientific developments, medical field especially, it has been a part of this. But it was kind of limited to some experts and whatnot. Now ChatGPT and similar bots, similar technologies, what they're doing is they're essentially these language processing, language learning models that talk like human beings, that engage like human beings, and by doing so, by removing all that jargon, all the technicality, they're bringing the benefits and the dangers of artificial intelligence down to the masses, to the normal general internet user. So that's essentially the unique point. So don't think of it as something that had never existed. It has been under development for eons, for decades. People have been working on artificial intelligence. The only new thing ChatGPT has been able to do, with 10 billion funding from Microsoft and other sources, is to kind of break that barrier of being limited to certain experts, break that privilege and bring it to people in a way that they understand, and then they can interact
So
with.
probably in all the languages we're going to see that, probably the ChatGPT is writing in Chinese, in English, in Urdu, in Punjabi.
Eventually, yes, but right now it's only in English. Which is also very interesting, because you talked about how it can benefit as well.
Yeah.
But what will happen right now, while the technology develops, while the languages come in, we will see that, you know, that English imperialism, that difference between English medium, Urdu medium, let's say, because
Right.
now
Interesting.
some of the students have this insane advantage, you know, of being able to access the technology that others can't take advantage of at the
True.
same way.
True.
True. So let's talk about the chat bots and how they can mass produce misinformation, disinformation, and it's a real concern that how to make sure that AI sticks to the truth. And like I mentioned before, that Meta's Galactica was cancelled just 3 days. It was launched. Why? Because it has mass produced the disinformation, misinformation regarding some political and scientific content, right? So there's a new set of dilemma for the people, especially who are in the journalism, or not just journalism, in the social media too, that how to stop this misinformation, disinformation. And here we have a very sophisticated technology that is doing that in such a sophisticated way
True.
that it is even difficult to comprehend that this is a fake news and not just a
You know, because just the way they write it, you know, because I've seen it myself, you know, it actually
Yeah.
covers all of the ills of it as well. But having said that, I mean, you know, my wonderful colleague actually referred to how it can actually be very chaotic because if there's any misinformation. But let's keep that word in our mind, if there is any, right? So the any really needs to be aware. Do you think that this chatbot will only produce misinformation or disinformation?
It will not only produce
Yeah.
misinformation or disinformation, um, but there is potential for it.
Okay.
Not just, you know,
If it falls into wrong
if
hands.
it falls, also there is
So we
obviously
might watch a film one day, you know, ChatGPT का गलत इस्तेमाल किसी ने कर लिया.
no. So essentially, think about how it's trained, right? It has been fed eons of data across the internet, but somebody has been curating the internet,
True.
right? What kind of information dominates the internet? What kind of information the creators, the developers have fed it? So even though if it's not misinformation, there might be certain level of bias, of political bias, of ideological bias, etc., that would seep in. Right now, the technology is closed. It's still in the, you know, if even in this powerful form, it's not at the, you know, optimum level. It's still being fed. It's still learning. It's a learning phase. That's why it's free, and the actual learning actually stopped in 2021. For 2022, the ChatGPT does not have any data, and it says so. When you ask it something, ask it to refer to it, it will tell you that, you know, this information might be a bit outdated because the language, the information that it has been trained on was in 2021.
So the model wasn't
So
of a continuous learning?
it's not. It's
Okay.
very interesting. So ChatGPT is not connected to the internet, but the engine that runs it, which is GPT-3 by the OpenAI, that's connected to
Okay.
the internet. But the chatbot that has been rolled out for the public, that's now in that testing phase. So that is not. So if you ask it, okay, give me a reference for whatever you have said from a journal published in 2022, it will not give you. It will tell you that I'm not connected to the internet and I can't pull that academic reference.
Okay.
Which brings me to also the question that you were asking. For a long time, I feel that the emphasis on dealing with misinformation has been on technological tools, you know, fact checking kara lein, we need a system, we need an application, something to identify whether there's misinformation or not, we need automated prompts, etc. But in the end, the age that we live in, we are so immersed in information that unless we start working on critical thinking skills, unless we start working on digital information literacy, it's not going to matter, because there is no way any technology, any one technology is going to be able to, you know, infer all this information. that's
Exactly,
coming in.
but you know, in future what we see is that obviously, you know, we might still have a lot of other facilities available just on the right context of, you know, what we're calling ChatGPT as of now.
Right.
And imagine that people over here are still not very critical of their thought processes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we do
Yeah.
not put in a lot of effort
That's
in
true.
research.
Absolutely.
People still do not know about Google Scholar. You know, people, you know, there are a lot of issues. So, I mean, how do you think that, you know, we will be smarter people in near future? Or do you think that then there will be only a certain percentage of the global population who would still be smart, you know, making innovations of such sort as well, and then others will just follow?
No, I think it's a real concern for Pakistan because of the way our education system is structured. From the very beginning, we go the rote learning way, right? And unfortunately, a lot of our educators actually have issues if children come up with original thought.
True.
They are taught to think in boxes. We are
That's true.
structurally taught to taught to think like robots. And when this happens, ChatGPT has passed I don't know how many exams. It has passed medical exam, it has passed now law exam and whatnot. But I have not seen social sciences exams being passed yet, because that requires some kind of critical engagement, right? So unless we start shifting the model of the way our curriculum is taught, unless we start thinking about the pedagogy, how we are making children
True.
think, they're going to fall behind. They definitely, an AI can do a rote learning much better than anybody in the world. The most genius person in the world will not be able to store as much information in his brain, in her brain, like the bot can.
Exactly,
So
and you know what? Just the other day, I was watching out in Instagram, and I was flabbergasted by the fact that that some individual actually used the pictures of Hollywood stars and put it into AI and made sure that so he wanted to see whether how they would look as if they are partying, and when I saw those pictures, I was like, these look real. So imagine that in days to come,
yeah.
whatever you see, you certainly cannot trust, but that at times it will give the leverage to people who have been partying as well. But having said that, I think when we come down to ChatGPT and when we talk about it specifically, we certainly really need to focus on its antidote as well. So when we speak of an antidote, obviously there needs to be a software which can actually figure out whether it came through ChatGPT as well, because Hajra was actually telling me that there is this gentleman who actually found another antidote to it as well. What is that? Can you
I
please
think
share that?
there was a Harvard student who actually designed a code that can actually deconstruct whether it's coming from the AI or whether it's coming from the human, some sort of development. So let's talk about the foundational models and why should everybody know about it. And it is said that the ChatGPT is based on one of the foundational model, and there's a lot of concern that this smart technology is getting too much smarter, right? What do you have to say?
I don't think so. So the point is, we do see it with a lot of fear because it's new, as you mentioned earlier as well. When social media came, we saw it with a lot of fear. But ChatGPT and similar models, they do take away a lot of redundant effort that we make. I'll give you an example. So let's say we are in any office job, there are a lot of meeting minutes being taken.
Okay.
And then somebody spends an hour trying to put them together in a format that it can be shared. You
Right.
feed that to ChatGPT, in 1 minute you have that report ready.
True.
So it can be used as a tool. One of the things that, one of the jobs that is most threatened is coding. Programmers, computer programmers. It has been trained on all the main computer programming languages. So you give it the prompt, it will generate the code for you. Yes, it does threaten some programmers, but it also enables a lot of programmers, right? It helps them find ways that maybe they personally couldn't. So it is also a very powerful tool that can be used if it's used in the right way. So
Right.
again, it comes back to, I think around 6-7 years back, Jack Ma, who's the founder of Alibaba
Yeah.
and which we know as AliExpress. I remember him speaking at the World Economic Forum, and he said what humans need to focus on is going to go back to their creativity, to their learning,
Right.
because tasks that are repetitive and redundant will be outsourced to AI, and we are seeing that coming in formation, right? So yeah, I think it's going to be used as a tool more specifically, and it will stop mattering, I think, whether it comes from the AI or whether it doesn't come from the AI.
Really?
So yeah, I think it will, because let's say BuzzFeed used to run all these polls that
Yeah.
got them engagement and whatnot. Let's say you find out an AI generated it, would you stop engaging with it?
So I think it's very difficult to
Yeah.
identify
I mean,
whether
we
it's from
wouldn't
the
be
AI.
able to, yeah. We
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to identify.
whether it's from the AI or the humans. But having said so, obviously, machine learning has its own set of fears that people have it. So what sort of opportunities do you see ChatGPT can create when it comes to Pakistan's ecosystem, and how the people here interacting with it?
I know somebody who actually just very recently used ChatGPT as well. It was his no, it was this gentleman's wedding anniversary. He actually wanted ChatGPT to write a lovely letter to his wife, and he did a phenomenal job. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen, that's where the intervention comes in. The wife already knew that the letter wasn't even written by him. So I think please be very careful of where you're going to use this technology. Not everywhere it can actually apply. And certainly if you are writing a letter to your wife, which you haven't in the last 20 years of your marriage, please make sure that you do not give it a try even now. Please go ahead.
No, yeah. What you were saying, you know, in terms of Pakistan specifically, we do have a very robust IT industry. I think because of its coding facility, rather than simply seeing as something that threatens our coders, I think if they plan well, they can use it definitely to their advantage. We don't have the numbers of IT graduates that, let's say, India or Bangladesh have. We have had some almost the similar number of IT graduates that have been coming out of the universities for the last 20 years. In our neighborhood, that number has quadrupled. It has multiplied so much.
True.
So I feel that if it's used properly by specifically our IT industry, by our freelancers who are exporting IT services and goods, it will increase their efficiency so much, and we will be able to compete better in a market which right now we are failing just because of our numbers, you know. It's not that we don't have talent when it comes to IT. We do. We are known for very good engineers and whatnot, but we simply don't have the numbers to compete. So a tool that kind of increases and enhances your effectiveness, increases your speed, it allows you to pitch, you know, from pitching to coding and everything. It depends on how you use it, how transparent you are, how, you know, how smart you are about it.
Exactly.
I think, yeah.
And which is where routers actually say that ChatGPT sets record for fastest growing user base as well. Wow, there are a lot of people who certainly feel that there is this need for them to use it. Please make sure that you use it for the right purpose as well. But thank you very much, Ms. Sadaf Khan, for being with us. Lovely to be in conversation with somebody who was so well aware about ChatGPT as well. So thank you very much. And for everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, the world is actually moving on a very fast pace. I mean, just now we were actually celebrating New Year's. Now we are in February.
Right.
Imagine the entire month of January has gone by as well. So please make sure that you're moving in the right direction.
So until next time, it's a goodbye, Allah Hafiz, and good
Good morning.